All right, welcome to our Thought Leader Perspectives panel. I'm Jason Dackman of SVG Americas. We've got a great group of vendors and facility providers here to talk esports production. You know, the thing about esports is they always tend to be on the bleeding edge, whether it was cloud-based infrastructure, whether it was, remote production. They were really ahead of the curve. And when the pandemic hit, as a result, partially, they were some of the first people to get back to doing live shows. And since then, the industry has just continued to evolve. So we're here to talk about some of those workflows. Very excited to have Charles from the Switch, John from Grass Valley, Mark from TSL, and Jamie from Gravity. Charles, I'm going to start with you. I know you have a very extensive background in esports, and now you're with the Switch, focusing on the esports sector. Tell us about how the Switch factors into the esports sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be here. Thank you for having me, Jason and SVG. The Switch has been in esports for about 3.5 years, and it started with us doing a BlizzCon and then seeing how massive the space would be. They brought me in to sort of lead endeavors there, and I'm proud to say we're now the world leader in esports transmission. So we support almost every 3-letter league in esports, OWL, CDL, ESL, Blast Pro Series, and WePlay. We provide internet to the events. We do the encode and decode of transmission for many of these. And in some cases, we provide production services, whether that be out of our control rooms in Burbank or using our cloud product Mimic. So we're really all encompassing in the space and really happy to support pretty much all the major leagues out there.
Very cool. John Carter from Grass Valley, you guys made a big splash in esports with the AMP product, has really been embraced by the esports community as well as other solutions. But tell us a little bit about how Grass can serve esports.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. Thanks for having us, and thanks to SVG again for having us on. With Grass Valley being primarily a technology vendor and provider, as esports have evolved, a lot of our equipment has been used in trucks that have been applied. The Switch are a good customer of ours, so is Gravity Media. So there's a good tie up there for today's panels on that. The way that the technologies and what we've learned, and as you were saying about the challenges of esport, these guys are going to different realms quicker than certain genres of TV. So what we've seen now is the adoption of cloud-based production tools, the connectivities there. As we go through the panel, I guess we'll look at some of the examples. But with Grass Valley predominantly very much in the esports space since the pandemic, using cloud-based technologies. A big trigger of that was, well, real sport couldn't be done on a field, so therefore everybody was still playing and participating in games. Basically, just send their signals to the cloud, and that's where we started evolving. So the pandemic was definitely an acceleration agent, and since then we haven't stopped.
Excellent. Very cool. And again, with AMP and the Grass Valley Media Universe solutions, we've seen a lot of very cool stuff within the esports space. I want to go to Mark Davies next at TSL. Mark, tell us a little bit about how TSL factors into esports production.
Hi, great. Well, thanks for having us at SVG. TSL as a vendor, we have 3 main product vectors: power distribution, audio monitoring, and control. And control is absolutely where we play in esports. So we've done a number of installations in big esport arenas such as Arlington, Freaks for You in Germany. And what we bring to the party is really unified control, because we're vendor independent on our control, which is good in the broadcast because we bring lots of different vendors together. But actually, when it comes to esport, we're bringing lots of different technologies together. So obviously, we'll be selecting, we'll have control which can select observer in-game positions, cameras on the host, cameras on the contestants, and making all of this as easy as possible to configure, set up, use for unskilled people. So people actually playing the games can decide when they're at an exciting point which should be on air and flag that to the director. So it's an exciting space for us. It can be challenging because we speak very different languages, I think, the traditional vendors and the esport community and the IT community, which are all coming together in this. So really exciting for us. And we always look forward to an esport installation.
Sure. Yeah. Like you said, different languages, but I think the translation is starting to get easier when it comes to traditional broadcast and esports. And we'll discuss that a little bit more. But first, Jamie Brewer over at Gravity. Jamie, you guys are all over the esports space and have been for a bit. Give us an overview of some of the shows that you guys have worked on and how you factor into this ecosystem.
Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you to SVG for having me on today. Yeah, so Gravity, in terms of traditional sports, we've been operating for a number of years, but in terms of esports, we're pleased to be involved with some pretty serious agencies and serious esports businesses like ESL, and I'm proud to say that we're a big production partner for their global events, and we'll be actively helping with them over the coming months. But also in conjunction with that, I'm proud to say that we've been working with Blast on a number of events that they've been fortunate to be involved with. The Premier Esports event recently was something that we were actively helping them produce in conjunction with Sky. And in conjunction with that, it's Gfinity. Gfinity have been a real kind of leader, not only with their arena, but also looking to branch out with large sponsors to get international events, more esports activity internationally. So we've been working with Gfinity a lot. And previous to that, the likes of Faceit, and now they've merged successfully with ESL with this enormous deal. I'm sure everyone's privy to the Savvy Games 1.5 billion merger that they've now done. So we're pleased to have been involved with both ESL and previously with Faceit, with there's some pretty substantial gaming IP previously. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah. We're certainly all keeping an eye on the Savvy Games entity merging Faceit and ESL, creating a new esports giant as that evolves. I'm sure we're all going to be dealing with that. But I want to start with that translation conversation, the speaking two different languages. Obviously, esports productions differ from traditional broadcast shows, but at the same time, there's plenty of similarities as well. And one party can certainly learn from the other. Charles, I'm going to start with you. How would you say traditional broadcasts differ from esports productions? And what are some of the unique characteristics from a transmission standpoint that you guys have to serve for your esports clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Coming from esports and then, working in the traditional broadcast world, it was amazing to me how many limitations there are in a traditional broadcast. And what I mean by that, esports is not confined to a physical space. There's no actual walls. You can fly all over the map. You can go through walls. You can get first-person views very easily. And that's exciting. It offers a lot of opportunities that you don't have in traditional sports. You don't have a first-person view of every player in the NFL. I can't see Brady's point of view when he's going to throw a pass, right? But in esports, I can focus on any player and see kind of what's going through their mind. And it just allows a deeper level of engagement, which has been really interesting. From a transmission standpoint, esports is very global. When, Overwatch League and Call of Duty League decided to have 84 events around the world pre-COVID, they weren't always in the easiest places to get broadcast fiber to, right? They were not really thinking venue first. That was a secondary thought. And it was a challenge for our team. And it was an exciting challenge to figure out how to get broadcast level fiber into 84 venues around the world and then how to distribute that effectively. So esports provides interesting challenges, interesting opportunities, and it's been a fun ride so far. We can certainly learn a lot from the traditional sports space. We don't know, right? And I think gatekeeping on either side is ineffective. We really do need to collaborate and teach each other best practices, and that's how we're all going to succeed.
Excellent. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. John, how about on your end? Obviously grass ubiquitous throughout traditional broadcast and now becoming a major player in esports. How did the two sectors differ from a strategy and philosophy point of view?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because the esports are like the latest on the block. We have to learn from the grandfathers. Actually, I'd turn it the other way around, right? I mean, when you take, if we block it out, we've got a stadium portion that we need to produce for. We've got the transmission side and the pres level layer that goes on there. When I watch the esports at those certain points, I can see, I see the speed of Formula One that has to happen that people need to react to. I can get the sense of a format that's like a typical EFL or a rugby match in the way that the program's put together. I mean, even in a venue like boxing of that nature, the sort of red corner, blue corner type element coming in there. So for me, you can see the professionals that have been in broadcast that's coming in to do the production side of esports, taken what they've used already, but actually put it on steroids. When I look at some of the sort of Vision Mixer TD types, you know, they're loading their desks up with like 60 macros for an hour's worth of cover. And, you know, that's seriously paced stuff, especially when you compare it to cricket as a different genre there. So for me, it's sort of, you know, these guys are running out there. They've got all the tools, they've got the techniques. It's been tried and tested, and they've applied it to tell the story at the stadium as well. When I sort of think of, look at Formula One over the weekend, you know, it's the gamers now that's sort of having an impact on the linear broadcast. What I saw on for a few frames was front camera from an onboard camera on a car pulling up to the rear of a car. The data that's flooding off the cars now is actually being used to tell the viewer who's the guy. Now that's what it was like when I played games. Nigel Mansell's, racing in the late 80s on my ZX Spectrum. But you can see that that's the first example I've seen of actually the gaming now leading onto the linear side. In terms of the pres layers, I mean, it's great to see all the augmented reality, the actual characters, the genre of the game that they're playing, while the guys are doing, this constant moving action, keeping attention of camera panning around the sets there. So, I mean, it's fast, it's exciting. There's lots of different elements that people have deployed in other sports and bringing it together and enhancing it and no doubt moving it forward.
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a great point that it's certainly a two-way street, right? It's not just esports absorbing things from traditional sports, but also traditional sports absorbing some of the lessons learned on the esports side. Mark, let's go to you next. From your perspective, what do you think is similar and what do you think is different when it comes to traditional sports production and esports production?
That's a really interesting question. So it's, I think the excitement levels can be even higher. When we go and do one of these installs, there has been mentioned previously, there's a lot of two-way mentoring. So we're learning from them and they're learning for us. I mean, thinking about one of the installs we did, they're saying, when a player gets to an exciting stage in a game, what does he have to do? Does he have to put his hand up so he can get the director's attention that he's at a stage which he thinks should be being broadcast? And we said, well, in traditional broadcasting, good cameras would have a pick me button, which comes from Formula One. That's a great way of getting attention. And we work with each other and said, well, we've got a box full of these Yamaha foot pedals, but we don't know what to connect them to. So our control box got loads of GPI ins on them. We can get those, we can process them, we can put them up on monitor board and tell the director. So we've mimicked a pick me button on a very expensive Grass Valley camera with a Yamaha switch and some GPIs. And we're learning from each other that they didn't know that was a process that was available in broadcast, and they've done it in their own IT gaming way. We've implemented it between us, and it's worked really effectively. So there are a number of things like that. And interestingly, we then go to, they get attention. They've told the director they're at a stage in their game where they should be picked and be on air because they think that's going to be really interesting. And then we go around the loop. Someone asks well, how do I know when I'm on air? We said, well, we could put a tally light on top of your screen. What's a tally light then? So there's this constant learning from each other that, we have the tools they need. They have similar excitement to live sport and similar requirements, really. So it's working out quite nicely. But there is that continual two-way learning process, which is great. That's why we're in this industry.
Sure. Yeah. Two great examples in terms of the tally light and the pick me button, just, kind of a no duh example from the broadcast. But, if the esports people aren't aware of it, then they're not aware of it. And that's where some of the cool synergy comes. Jamie, Gravity obviously, does thousands of events across the globe in traditional sports, but like you mentioned at the top of the session, really making headway into esports from a live production aspect. How do the two differ, and where do you see the similarities?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because we've learned a huge amount from our traditional workflows, particularly in Australia. There's a really interesting video that you can find that shows the pivot that we did with our supercars partnership over in Oz. And due to the pandemic, we were unable to, produce the races in a traditional way. But what we found was the production team were able to pivot what they ordinarily do and start shooting some of these drivers in their own rigs, in their own home environment. And that's allowed for producing a whole new flavor of production for supercars. They were over the moon that what they were enabled to do was get access to the drivers in a whole new place. The helmets came off, they were relaxed, they were in their home environment, and the sim racing continued as they would do the normal racing. And so we've learned that actually, albeit it is a new space, and there's an enormous amount of streams coming off these esports events, that we found that actually that pivot from traditional workflows in Australia to the esports experience has allowed for us to produce a really exciting new type of content. So that's been great. Outside of that, some of the learnings we've had from our events with Face It, we did a Counter-Strike event with them at Wembley Arena, which followed from an event at Twickenham Stadium. And the sheer amount of streams that we had to deal with was just mind-boggling. I mean, we had over 80, 33 of those were sort of standard camera feeds, but then the remainder were generated from computers. And we had an absolute nightmare in terms of syncing. So, grateful for John and his fabulous Grass Valley kit that we were able to sort of manage the sync into the vision mixers on those things. But I think ultimately we're all learning, and I think we're just trying to demonstrate that we've got some really great experience. We know how to produce great content, and I think that's what the agencies and the esports and the video publishers are keen to continue to do.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you mentioned just a monumental number of sources. That's one of the key differences, right? Esports events tend to have just a monumental number of sources, and then of course the observer aspect, right? In terms of basically in-game camera operators, producing in a very different way from traditional sports, and we could talk about that much deeper. But I want to get to a big trend that we're of course seeing throughout all of live production, but esports really led the way early on, and that's remote production and cloud-based workflows. Obviously the pandemic and financial obligations, limiting travel, that type of thing have accelerated remote production dramatically. But esports really was embracing this early on. Charles, I'll go back to you to start off, especially considering you guys are providing the backbone for a lot of these remote workflows. How have you seen esports really lead the way when it comes to embracing the cloud and remote production workflows?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, esports really had a sort of a heyday of international attention when it was the only thing to watch. Because of the pandemic, there was no traditional sports, but esports doesn't require an arena. And because it lives online, it can broadcast under any conditions. So we saw a huge and very rapid shift to remote and cloud-based production to produce these online tournaments. A lot of it stuck and is still in every workflow today. Our cloud-based product Mimic is one of those examples, but there are many. Some rely on hardware, some don't. These tournaments are going to keep the cloud-based production model as their workflow because it works. And I think people shifted to it a little quicker than they might have planned to or have been comfortable with, but they've all figured it out, whether it's piecemealing together multiple solutions, which a lot of esports companies are very used to doing, kind of taking a piece of duct tape and making it work. But now there's, very robust cloud offerings from a variety of providers that esports companies are using. And again, I don't see them going back because cloud is working and it does allow this global community to work together fairly seamlessly.
Sure. Yeah. John, Grass, I know, was working with some of the leading esports organizations on AMP even before, the pandemic hit. And then when it hit, obviously the development cycle got accelerated a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how you've seen esports embrace not just AMP, but overall, cloud-based ecosystems.
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly been an exciting time. When we think about 2 years ago, we weren't really talking now openly about cloud production and giving people the accessibility to each other to basically to put a stream on the air or get that reach. So you know, the sort of timeline of what's happened there is, yes, the companies understand cloud technologies for sure. There's a lot of further developed IT experience and knowledge with those type, and these are why the guys are sort of jumping on the GPU type bandwagons to start with, and the CPUs, and understand elements of the compute where maybe we're a bit FPGA based with some of the thoughts and the process traditionally. So the first goal was literally, how do everybody can play, I can get the reach through the internet, how do I bring it together? And this is where we saw people, you know, putting streams into their cloud production areas or wherever their data plane would be. So an ability to send from ground to cloud, then let's make multi-viewers, let's get monitoring done, let's bring streams back down to people so they could actually act in the right times of that production of what they have to do, typically call the graphic or multiple graphics as you see in esports. So actually it was that disassembly of the collaborative gallery from across states, from across country, that was all of a sudden, hey, it works. You know, do you trust it? I trust it. It works. And then this has gone and said, well, actually, maybe we need to think about things wider. And you sort of fast forward into the next block of developments. We had guys switching on the West Coast of sources that were guys that were gaming, 20 plus feeds that were being generated in Europe with a guy on the West Coast there, and then producing a game of that nature with in a transparent manner, because it was using physical connected hardware, as we call in Grass Valley, or a posh word for a control panel that's on my switcher. So these things developed, and it's reached a state of maturity now that we can offer an audio mixer in the cloud. We've got replay going on in the cloud, or expanding our asset management in the cloud. So what you've got on it is a unified platform that has all the elements that you need. So the customer base now doesn't have to be concerned of having like umpteen different types of vendors and gluing it all together to make it work. They can just now pull in the microservices that they require. And that's one of the big positives and the benefits of the AMP approach, where it's all based on microservices. You basically tailor-made your workflow to what you're doing at that point in time, be it a large event, small event, whatever you need to do. And the cost benefits as you use what you need to use. And It's quite interesting to see some of the profiling of customers, the tournament time, and the applications that they use. And again, it makes us a better business because we can hone in on those exact points for the event type and the workflow type.
Yeah. And, it really has become a lot more mature in terms of the tools that are available. Like you said, early on, let's be honest, audio mixing was limited. Replay was limited. We're getting those tools that we're so used to having in a truck now available in the cloud, and they're dependable and pretty high quality. So it's getting there. It's a long way of saying it's getting there. Mark, in terms of your experience, how are you seeing your esports clients and the overall esports sector embrace remote and cloud?
It's quite good. They were a little bit ahead of the curve anyway. I mean, from our control platform deployments, we've always been able to deploy them remotely. In fact, before COVID, we were scratching our heads thinking, why are 80% of our customers happy with remote deployments, but 20% insist on us going on site? COVID changed that very rapidly, so we were ready for that. But esports pretty much have always adopted the remote deployment. The pandemic and what the cloud offered them allowed them to shift to more remote production. So instead of trucks going out with crews, we saw fly packs going out, and then those fly packs could arrive on site. We could talk to the people who were doing the remote production and help them set them up and configure them remotely. Esports is certainly an early adopter of, we offer obviously hardware panels and virtual panels, so that they were far more comfortable with virtual panels much earlier than the traditional broadcast customers. And the ability we give them to configure these panels themselves and put the enormous number of sources we've heard about on those panels and set them up the way they want. That was really welcome, when all they were getting was a fly pack, and then they could get on Teams with one of our support people and say, hey, I need the 64 in-game buttons up the top. I need the commentator cameras underneath. and configure it the way they wanted. So again, there was a bit of a learning exercise, but I think, of all our customers, the esport people were most comfortable with embracing this technology, and it did what they wanted very quickly.
Yeah, there's a culture in esports of let's try it, right? Let's give it a shot. Whereas obviously traditional broadcast, as amazing as these productions are, it's a little bit like steering the Titanic sometimes when it comes to making, big bleeding edge decisions. So that's what's exciting about esports. Jamie, Gravity, obviously you guys have been leaders in terms of centralized production and some of these, remote workflows. Specific to the esports space, how have you seen these guys really embrace those workflows?
Well, I mean, I think we've already touched on it a lot, and we are fortunate enough to be working with some of our existing, major sporting clients on providing them with remote solutions. So I think when we're asked by whether it be our partnerships with ESL or the likes of Gfinity or any of those guys, then we're pretty much primed to engage very quickly with the stuff that we've learned from some of the proof of concept work that we've done with the ATP or other federations in conjunction with our remote solutions. We're very fortunate to be working with a number of interesting businesses that are out there promoting very clever UIs that are backed by Amazon Web Services and all of those cloud vendors. Obviously other vendors are available, but we've learned a lot from that traditional space, and so in terms of our suite of offer, we're ready to go. I mean, I think they're actively out there looking to remote, to reduce footprint on site and make that a key message for what they're trying to do in their new events. But I think we're definitely taking all of the learnings that we've had from our work with our existing clients and trying to apply that to the needs of some of our production service deals that we have in line now with ESL and with Gfinity and so on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, as IRL and LAN events return finally, when it comes to, in-person esports events, it's not like all this development of the last 2 years is just going to go away, right? Sure, there'll be on-site footprint, of course, but there's also going to be integration of some of these remote workflows and of course, the cloud. Gents, sadly, we are very short on time, so I'm going to go to our closing lightning round question. I'm going to ask each of you 30 seconds or less. I will cut you off, I promise, to give me one prediction about the esports production space within the next 12 months. Give me one thing you see coming down the pike in the next 12 months. Charles, you get to lead off.
Yeah, zero pressure. I think you're going to see a lot more integration of augmented reality versus traditional sports in a much more meaningful and quicker way. Esports sort of leads the way in technology in a lot of aspects. They're willing to try new things. They're willing to break it and learn how to fix it. And AR is certainly going to be the new tech that everyone's going to be playing with.
Very cool. John, give me one guess about the next 12 months.
Okay. Esports is on fire. It will remain on fire. It's great, open, inclusive, healthy. Theos is brilliant. In a cancel click type culture, they need to be rapid. Change happens. And hopefully there's a tool set there that they can rapidly deploy to meet their demands.
Great. Mark, how about you?
So esports, definitely, I think, the fastest growing sector within the business. It's really exciting. It's only going to carry on growing and get bigger. From a technology viewpoint, I'm led to believe the games actually generate a huge amount of metadata, which is not being fully utilized. Getting your hands on that metadata, applying some AI to it, and doing really interesting things with the productions from that viewpoint could be a very exciting way forward.
Absolutely. There's so much data coming out of these games, and you don't have those pesky humans. It's all data. The whole sport is data. So, Jamie, close us out.
Well, I mean, I think I'm going to plagiarize a little bit from that. I mean, one thing we've learned is there's no denying it. The esports is exploding. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But I think there's a demand from us to bring more than just kit and crew. I think these people are expecting some decent ability to delve into the analytics. We've seen some expectation from traditional sports production companies for us to provide them with that ability. And I think what I've learned from working with within the esports fraternity is that analysis and an ability to really harness the data for them whilst we're helping produce the shows is going to be crucial.
Absolutely. So we got AR, we got esports is going to remain on fire, better utilization of metadata, and you got to bring more than just the kit and the crew. Let's talk analytics. I think for solid predictions, we'll see what happens the next 12 months, and hopefully we'll be back here or maybe even in person next time we want to chat. But for now, everybody, thank you so much for taking the time. Stay safe, stay healthy.